And then the final question was actually the most practical to me in that space and time, was if I could forgive what many say is the unforgivable, could I forgive my current situation? Could I forgive my ex-husband? Could I forgive myself? And when you ask yourself questions like that, and you start making the answers non-negotiable, crazy things happen, you guys. The universe aligns and just drops these gifts right in your lap. And the first thing that happened was I'm a social scientist, and I discovered that positive psychology has oodles of literature on happiness, right? So I started reading. And what I discovered in that sort of exploration was that forgiveness is in fact scientifically understood as a key component to happiness. Who knew, right? And as I'm reading along, very interesting indeed, whose story would I come upon but our families as an example of what forgiveness was? Well, that was quite motivational, needless to say, to sort of figure out where I was in this whole forgiveness thing. And so the second gift came along, and this one was a big one. I had an opportunity to meet one of the men responsible for taking my sister's life. And this is him. Not strange to my parents, who for 15 years have been running the Amy Biehl Foundation in Cape Town, South Africa, literally working side by side with two of the men who took Amy's life in violence prevention work and in economic empowerment programs in the very townships where they were raised under horrible circumstances and where she was killed under horrible circumstances. But for me, this was different. And they were with my mom and Tobacco were going to be speaking at Berkeley. And so I asked, if I could come. And I prepared for a lot of meetings in my life. I have never in my life prepared for something like this. And Desmond Tutu says something. He says, the people who think forgiveness is weak are the people who've never tried it. And amen. Let me just tell you, because that meeting was, in my opinion, one of the most courageous things that I've ever done. And so it was decided that we meet for a glass of wine before the speaking engagement that my mom and he were going to be speaking at. And I, very wisely, I guess, showed up with 2 bottles because I thought that might be good. And so I went to my mom's hotel to pick her up, and I knocked on her door, and she said, okay, now we're going to go see Tobacco. We'll go get him from his room, and I'm standing there with my 2 bottles of wine. I said, okay, great, thinking we're going to go down the hallway, up the elevator, and, find him somewhere. And instead, she walks out the door, walks right across the way to the door, across from her in the hallway, and knocks on the door. And so my meeting that I was so worried about happened like this. Essentially, he opened the door, I with my wine in hand, said, hi, I'm Molly. And he said, Molly, it's so nice to see you. And if I could replay that night, it was the most magical experience I've ever had. We walked down to the lobby and we cracked open the wine and we sat around a table talking, and he and I sat next to each other, and literally it was just 2 human beings. And we were sharing our stories. We were sharing stories about the township in South Africa and about life in suburban San Diego. And we talked about our children, and we talked about their names and what they meant. We talked about our dreams for our future and our jobs. And we talked about my dad, who we both respected and loved very much. And we went over to the event, and we sat next to each other at the table, and we continued talking. And when I was at the side of the road, initially having my moment, one of the things I realized, had I not only not been able to feel gratitude, but I hadn't laughed. I couldn't remember when I had laughed. And here we are sitting at this table, and he said something so funny, and I cracked up. And so much so that a woman at the table looked over and went, shh. It was our little secret. We had this thing. And so when I left, I gave him a hug, and I honestly, I wished I could see him again. And went back to my friend's apartment where I was staying. I just sort of sat down to reflect and soak in, what had happened. And I knew one thing: I had forgiven. And I knew another thing: I want this feeling in my life every single day. Because what the feeling was peace. It was quiet. All of the fears and concerns and questions and defenses, all of those things that for literally 20 years, because at that point that's probably how long it had been, they were gone. They vanished. And it was just a blanket of warmth and peace and satisfaction, and then this generosity of spirit and this desire to do something bigger, right, than what I was doing. And so I went home, back to my San Diego suburban existence, feeling like the freaking Dalai Lama. I was like, I have arrived, and so I'm there, and I'm getting my kids doing their things, and I 2 days into it, totally deflated. I guess my ex-husband had failed to serve my children vegetables. And somehow, that did the whole disappointment, blame. I mean, I don't even know, but I lost it. And I was like, man, I need that again. And so I actually decided, I need some inspiration. So I have the good fortune of having met this man. I guess I'm not the only one in the room. On more than one occasion, Nelson Mandela. And I started thinking, all right, what did Mandela do? And it dawned on me that Mandela used forgiveness as a component of a strategy to liberate an entire oppressed people. And I thought, if he can do that, I can use forgiveness as a strategy to liberate myself. And so that's what I did. I started honing in on forgiveness as a habit every single day. And it would start with literally waking up in the morning and say, you are worthy of the peace of mind that forgiveness brings. And the next thing was an intention. You are going to feel better today about your situation than you did the day before. And then the next thing was, you are going to accept the situation that you are currently in. And you're going to trade in that anger for feeling the hurt that this all actually caused you. And you're going to process that. And you're going to grow through it. And that cycle that's keeping you angry and stuck, it's going to go away. And then the fun part became visualizing, what does my life look like with all that noise gone, right? With all that forgiveness and that peace present. And that was a really fun exercise. And then the next thing was being conscious, right? Every time I exuded grace in a situation where I otherwise would have not, I celebrated. I documented that. And I exuded self-compassion every time I didn't. And that was my strategy. And I'm telling you, over time, I developed a mindset where I can now say that peace is my default way of life. And the disappointments, all that stuff, it happens all the time. But it comes through. It moves through. It isn't my mindset. And that's what I've developed, is a mindset. And the thing about a mindset is, in that mindset, you see forgiveness as a choice, right? It can be a strategy. Forgiveness is amazing. It can be a very ethereal experience, a very spiritual experience, a very religious experience. But for me, it was a choice. And I can see it now. I can see when the man cut me off on the freeway. It was all right, he was having a bad day. Or I can see, if something happened in my community, there was gossip and, whatever. I can see it and I can experience it differently. Ex-husband didn't serve vegetables to the kids. That was cool too. In fact, I could even remember why I loved him every now and then. Not all the time, but every now and then. And I could see forgiving myself. And I could see how far I'd come, And it was such a pleasure. And motivating and inspiring to sort of live in that space. And when I think about forgiveness and the choice that we have every day, if we're just conscious of those opportunities and look back in the hours following Amy's death, I actually had a choice right after it happened. And it went like this. I got the call from the State Department, as you saw. I got on an airplane. I was living in D.C. at the time. And I was flying home to California to be with my family. And I got on the plane, and I was obviously a mess. And this man came up, and he handed me a box of tissues. And he said, "Oh my gosh, something's happened. What's wrong?" And I told him. I said, "God, I just found out that my sister was murdered in South Africa." And he said, "Well, what the hell was she doing there?" Right? That is a state of unforgiveness. And I could have sat there wondering that same thing. It's ugly there, guys. You are stuck. There is no way you're moving forward if you're going to spend your life answering that question. So then I get on the airplane and I fly home and I land in LA, and a friend picks me up and whisks me down to the house, and there's news reporters camped out in her driveway, and I'm sneaking around back, and I walk in the door, and it was also overwhelming. And my parents said to me, "Molly, we're going to celebrate Amy's life." That was a choice. It wasn't a conscious choice. It was just something that we were moved to do. And in that space, there's expansion. There's growth, there's understanding, there's a desire to do something and a desire to make a difference. And those are the choices that we have. We just don't always see them. Forgiveness is a gift. It's an example to your family. I did see him again. He came back and we went to Disneyland. It's an example for community. I got to take a program that I started here years ago to the very place where Amy was killed, and in the course of all this time, thousands of people have participated in many of our programs, but that's what the generosity of forgiveness allows. And strangely enough, sometimes forgiveness can be an inspiration to the world. There's forgiveness stories happening all around us. They're small, they're big. We just never hear about them. But for some reason, the story of Amy and my parents' response to her death and the work that has evolved coming from that has inspired folks such as that group right there, who's actually currently working on a feature film. It's called The Year of the Great Storm. And there's some pretty significant actors that I think are going to attach themselves to the project. These are people from all around the world. The director is actually from Iraq, and he was actually his Achilles tendon was cut out by Saddam Hussein's regime, and he chose to do our story because he identified with Amy's murders. So really fascinating stuff can happen if you open yourself up to the possibility of forgiveness. And I'd just like to end by saying, it's hard to imagine what my life would look like had I not chosen forgiveness. But it's so easy to imagine what the world could look like if we all only would. Thank you.